Welcome to the Sip and Scale podcast, where we talk about everything business, entrepreneurship, and startups. My name is Blendi Muriqi. I'm the CEO and founder of Delegate.co. Each week, you'll join us as we talk with industry experts and business owners, sharing actionable insights to drive your business forward. So grab your favorite beverage and let's sip our way to success. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sip and Scale podcast. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Gerta Malaj. Gerta is a world-class negotiator trained by experts from MIT and Harvard Law School. She holds a master's degree in logistics engineering from MIT and a degree in math from Wellesley College. Her 10 plus years of experience span from big tech like LinkedIn, IBM, to global biotech firm Sanofi. She's also had the chance to found and advise for startups and VC firms like SPC. Gerta, welcome to the podcast. We're glad to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me, Blendi. I'm excited.
Awesome. So I came across your LinkedIn profile, and you happen to be a fellow Albanian, as I am, and I was so impressed by your background. But really, I found it interesting that you have this niche business that you have been working on that focuses on helping people negotiate. I haven't seen that in the past from other people. I've read a lot of books on negotiating, but never really a service that helps business owners, people trying to aspire for higher things in their career, really with negotiating. I guess to begin, tell me a little bit about yourself and your background and how you ended up starting yournegotiations.com.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. It's so much easier to connect the dots looking backwards. So, of course, I didn't start my career thinking I was going to be a negotiations expert and start my own business. But over the years, I always had a passion for behavioral sciences, and I was reading on like psychology and all these studies that help you get the results you want. And also as an immigrant in the US and just coming from a developing country like Albania, I think we're inherently a very hustly. So I had this internal hustle as an immigrant and coming from a developing country. I had this passion for entrepreneurship, passion for behavioral sciences. And then when I was at MIT, I was taking a lot of classes on like business and negotiations. And as I was trying out different things throughout my career, about a year ago, I was thinking of starting another business. And together with my husband, we were actually thinking like, what would this business be in? And we were very drawn to online education business models. They are very lean and they also are very scalable. And so it was very enticing to do that. I had already been a VC-backed founder before. And when we started this business, the VC money was very dry. There wasn't much going around. So we're like, okay, let's bootstrap a business. What could it be in the online education space? And we're like, what are we good at? And I have this, by that time, I had a reputation in our community for helping people negotiate everything from like contracts to their job offers to rent and concert tickets, everything. So we're like, okay, maybe we should just do a negotiations business. And that's how it started over a year ago now.
That's amazing. I mean, I know personally, I have learned, I guess, through trial and error, through losing like one side of a argument or some sort of contract that we have been analyzing. If you don't have someone to guide you through a negotiation and give you best practices, you end up with the short end of the stick. You're in SF, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm in San Francisco. Yeah.
Huge tech hub. People are getting job offers left and right at a lot of these tech firms. And if they don't know how to properly negotiate, let's say their job offer, they could be losing out on something that, it could be tens of thousands of dollars at the end of the day.
And what actually gave me so much motivation for this, and I'm very inspired by our mission, is that currently the field is very imbalanced. So if you're like a founder and you're negotiating against investors, well, as a founder, your strengths are maybe engineering or entrepreneurship and marketing, whatever. But investors are typically come from business school and they negotiate with founders day in and day out. So it's a very sort of deal to begin with. And then similarly for job offers, recruiters and companies, they're negotiating day in and day out. They have such good information on like what is the market paying. It can be very granular. This level, this title, this years of experience and all that. Versus you as a candidate, you don't have all that. You're not negotiating day in and day out typically. You don't have market data that is statistically significant and employer reported. So what really gets me excited to wake up every day is like I'm making things more fair. And it's a mission I care very deeply about.
I can give you a real life example of that. So here in New York, we host on a monthly basis like a founders meetup, entrepreneurs meetup, different people in tech. Some of them have like sweaty startups, the service based industry. And one person I'm thinking of in particular, he had created a chocolate company, which did
I love
really well.
chocolate.
I mean, who doesn't? This is an interesting thing of chocolate. It was like a chocolate for, it was like a sex chocolate. You know, it's like there are these different products online that, you know, tout that it like gets you in the groove. This was one of those. But in any case,
Okay.
the product did really well. They were able to market it in a way where they wouldn't get banned on Facebook and
Yeah.
Instagram. And he had sold the company to some individuals, and he was telling me that like this is a young guy. This is a guy in his early 20s too. And he was
Oh,
telling me
wow.
that he was just one thing he was not fully equipped for was the negotiations when he went to sell the company, and had a few years under his belt in negotiating. He may have come out of the deal with a lot more money than he ended up getting.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there are a ton of cases with young startup founders in Silicon Valley that are in that same position.
Yeah, and the point where people need the most help is the first time they raise, because, you know, if it's the second time, third time, you also have your investors that are probably guiding you and have resources. You've already done it for a while. You're probably better connected and all that. But the first time, especially like pre-seed or seed, you're in a vulnerable position and it's tricky and you don't know what's a good deal, what's a bad deal. It's not super clear oftentimes. So yeah, I mean, I wish your friend had a better outcome, but maybe future friends would like to work with me.
Yeah, 100%. Now, when did you start your negotiations? How long have you guys been in business so far?
Yeah, so we started it technically incorporated, I think April of last year, April 2023. I typically have my hands in a lot of pots. So I was actually still at the time doing a few other things. I started an incubator for people wanting to found generative AI startups. And then out of that incubator, startup was formed. My mentor started a startup there and I was consulting for him part-time. So I came full-time into this business, yournegotiations.com, a few months ago now, like maybe March or so of 2024. So I've been full-time only for a few months, but in the meantime, my husband Alex is a co-founder and been working on it as well.
That's awesome. What has been your like go-to-market strategy thus far in really getting traction? I mean, like I can see it's just a huge need, but how are you guys structuring? Are you structuring it from a consulting standpoint where you're just people, you know, hire you on a consulting basis? Are you structuring it as because you had mentioned the e-education space is huge. People selling courses is huge these days. How are
Yeah.
you kind of divvying up the product for people?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, as you know, in startup land, there's such a big luck factor. And so, part of this is that we got very lucky. My husband used to work at Instagram, and at the time, Meta was having a lot of layoffs, which is unfortunate. But what that means is people were learning that we're starting a negotiations business. And the people who have been affected by the layoffs, they were not getting as good of offers because Meta pays so well. And so they're like, there's so much pride that goes into your pay and your title. And they're like, we need to negotiate these offers. So people reached out to us. Hey, we heard you have a negotiations business. There is this Facebook group of ex-Meta employees that were affected by the layoffs. And there's, I think, thousands of people there. And there's people asking questions about negotiations every few days. Do you guys want to do some sort of Q&A? I'm like, yeah, of course, we would love free Q&A. There were hundreds of people who signed up, hundreds of people who showed up. And that's how we got our first client and many other clients. And then our reputation grew from there. And one fun fact, both Alex and I were kind of camera shy and we like our privacy. So we didn't start posting about our business on LinkedIn or Instagram for like almost a year. It's hilarious. We were so nervous because my network is in like, big tech and like, VCs. And I was so nervous tell my network that now I'm doing a bootstrap business in a consulting / online education space. It's not considered very glamorous in Silicon Valley when all my friends are raising like 20 millions left and right. But we quickly got over it because we were seeing results results. We saw product market fit very quickly within a few weeks. And we're like, a lot of these startups, they sometimes never find product market fit. Sometimes they don't have revenue or profit for years. We have both of those things. So we were like, okay, we should just tell the world what we're working on. And so that has also been one of the channels of top of funnel as well.
That's awesome. Now, this is like bigger picture, but do you see a shift happening in Silicon Valley now where there's more of an emphasis on businesses just like coming to market and making money? Because I have friends, for example, people that I know that, they had this mindset 5 years ago where it's like, I raised $20 million. I'm like, $20 million raised, but like you still haven't made any revenue. Is it changing now where people are actually more gun-ho on like, okay, my company is actually like profiting or actually revenue positive?
In some ways, it's definitely changing, but I just want to disaggregate some of the components here. So one is that SF, San Francisco, Silicon Valley, is very engineering heavy. And so a lot of the companies here are in AI or, B2B SaaS. So those will they will still need VC money. They will still need some time to find product market fit. But what I'm seeing the shift more is in people's mindset. So a lot of people who were in my shoes, so over the last several years, up until a year ago, I wanted to have a VC-backed startup, which I did about 2 years ago. And now people are a lot more open to, actually, I should probably bootstrap and find maybe a smaller type of business I can scale later, generate revenue as soon as possible and profit. So I think it's more at the individual level that things are changing. In the macro level, the engineers are still focusing on like AI. AI is very here still.
Yeah. Can imagine. Is there a component to the business? Because, one of the drawbacks of a consulting business model is you'll need to hire more consultants, more negotiation. And that's the beauty, I guess, of the e-learning model is you're able to iterate that over and over again. Is that where the business model is going, where like you're kind of compartmentalizing every aspect of the negotiations process and then just saying, hey, here it is. This is going to help you. And, it's like you make it once and then just market.
Yeah. So right now, you mentioned earlier that we will talk about scale, and I'm so excited to talk about that and pick your audience's brain. But basically, right now, what we're offering is one-on-one consulting where I'm actually the client's like negotiations co-pilot 24/7 if I'm not on call. So that's one thing that's working really well because I can be hands-on. That's our main revenue generator. And then we offer self-paced online courses that includes a call with me, just one. But that one is so much more scalable, right? Like it's only one call with me. And then we also offer live courses where I teach live like a full class. People can interact with me and the other course mates. So I guess to answer your question, I think it was around scaling, right? So I don't think we will hire other negotiators anytime soon, just because I have a very niche approach to negotiations. It would need to brain transfer a lot of it. I would love to scale my online courses and just sort of figure out a way for that to act in a passive way. But to be honest with you, it's my challenge is the scaling. We're past 0 to 1. We found product market fit super quickly, revenue, profit, all that. But now it's about like scaling our time. We tried a marketing agency for Facebook ads and Instagram ads. That didn't work very well, and it's not super clear why. And so now we're just doing a lot of organic content on Instagram, X, and LinkedIn. So that's what we're trying. But if anyone in your audience has any recommendations, because there's 20 things we could be doing, right? Like we could do, I know you do TikTok. We could do TikTok. We could do podcasts. So we could do a book or whatever. That's like 20 things we could be doing. It's hard to know what will actually give results. So that's my biggest challenge right now.
You're speaking to the choir here. So like my business vertical, we do staffing solutions for various types of businesses right now, mainly in the property management space. And advertising costs are, you could be paying up to $1,000 a click. And so it becomes super expensive to do that. It worked 10 years ago when, the cost per click was nominal. It doesn't work as well today. And so it's kind of been a kick to my ass when it comes to growing the business because it's forced me to get in front of a camera. It's forced me to say I have to go and post more about my business and I have to get my face in front of business. It's not going to work with strictly advertising, or at least it's not going to be profitable. And what I've seen with a lot of key takeaway in the experience I've had is the businesses that are able to get themselves on LinkedIn well known on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and build a following, that will bring
Mhm.
a lot of organic business where you don't need to spend a lot of money on ads.
Yeah, and we've been so lucky in the last maybe 5 months or so. All our clients, they just come to us. We haven't made any proactive efforts, not much of a free Q&As or anything like that. And sometimes we don't know how they found us. So how did you find us? They're like, I don't remember. I think I saw you on Instagram and LinkedIn, or someone referred you, and feeling that product market fit is so nice. But I'm excited to scale and figure out how to scale from here.
Do you think that being in the location you're in has given you a great advantage scaling the business? You're right in the nitty gritty of like VC land, big tech. Do you think that you would had the success you've had thus far if you were in like another city or another state?
I think location is very important. I think what's more important is we make a strong effort to build community and be active members of different communities here. So we're very engaged with the tech community, the founder community. I co-lead several communities. I co-founded an incubator, as I mentioned. So being just very plugged into those worlds. But you're right, that's strongly correlated with location. Of course, like tech and founders are mostly, there's so many of them in Silicon Valley. So it definitely helps, but it's not the end all be all. You still need to hustle, to network, to be an engaged member of a community. And then it really helps, not gonna lie, our background. So like I said, my husband used to work at Meta. I used to work at LinkedIn. I have a very eclectic career. And my clients can see that. And so I get clients from biotech. I used to work in biotech. I get clients from big tech and startups and VC, and they can see that I understand the industry very well.
I mean, it also build like you have a rapport you build with them because
Yeah,
you speak the same language, right? You like have
exactly.
the
Yeah.
same background, so like it's a lot easier to have a conversation, or it's a lot easier for them to say, "Oh, I very much relate to this person because of their background. Like, let's see what they have to say." I was gonna say on the point on SF, I heard this the other day on another podcast where someone was saying like, if you want to really accomplish great things, SF is the place to go because you go there and you don't have many like too many distractions like other cities. Like I live in New York
Hmm.
City. There's a ton of distractions. When you go to
Yeah.
SF, you're there to accomplish great things. You're there to
Hmm.
work, to hustle. So that's a great environment to have a company like this grow.
No, that's so true. SF doesn't have much of a nightlife. Like people, even when you have a dinner that's going a little later, they're like, "Oh, I have to go home because I have a hike tomorrow morning." It's very funny. Yeah, that's the stereotype. But yeah, I think it's a great environment to build, to start the business and grow it. And the best part is everywhere you go, even if it's like a party or an event, everyone is just so impressive. I just love the community here, and you learn and you connect with incredible people even if you're at a party. Like I actually, quick example that maybe your audience will find interesting, maybe a year or two ago I was applying to Y Combinator and I went to this event. It was like an art gallery mini party, and I'm in the dance floor and I run into a friend. I'm like, "Oh, what have you been up to?" I'm like, "I'm applying to YC." Like, "Oh, I went through YC. Let me recommend you. Let me send a recommendation." So we're in the middle of the dance floor on a weekend night, and he's opening up his YC, website, and he's referring me to YC right there on the dance floor. It was so incredible. I was like, wow, you're somehow productive even when you're partying. So this is what I love about SF, and it's honestly my absolute favorite city in the world.
That's amazing. I'm
No
trying.
offense to New York, my second favorite.
Well, I have friends that are very business minded, for a lack of a better term. And here in New York, 100%, there's a lot more things to do. So,
For sure.
what I'm trying to do is kind of build that community in New York. I mean, we have a really big city, and there are a lot of startups that are based here in New York. So, it's just a matter of finding them and getting them in one place and being able to like schedule around it. So we're trying to build that slowly but surely. But I
Yeah,
do
no,
am
community is
into
important.
I love the idea of, being able to go to an event or party, or even like if you go out to a bar in SF, every person you meet has like
Yes,
something going on, something interesting, and it pushes you to like, you're like, wow, I really have to step up my game. It's something to
absolutely.
aspire.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was even even an example where I went to live in a co-living house for founders a while ago, and people are so ambitious. There were these like much younger, like early 20s people, and they would meet. I was still at LinkedIn at the time. And they would come up to me and be like, "You're so cool. Like, why are you still working in corporate?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I thought, working at LinkedIn had been my dream for the last 5-10 years." And these kids who are like early 20s, they thought that that wasn't cool. It was like, having your own startup, what was cool. And they actually inspired me, slightly offended, but mostly like inspired that I can envision so much more for myself. And that really helped kickstart my founder journey.
That's the Albanian mentality kicking in. Growing up in an Albanian household, there's a saying that my parents would make, like, okay, like, you go to school, you get a good education,
Exactly.
you work at the corporate level, or in my case, it was like becoming a lawyer, for example.
Yes.
So when you have like a bunch of early 20-year-olds like making your decisions, you're like, actually, is the corporate life like for me? The beauty of it is now you look back and you appreciate the time
Yes.
that you spent, because it gave you so much experience. But at the same time, you now understand the freedom that
Yes.
running your own company.
It definitely has its pros, but it also has some cons. So there a couple interesting examples are, of course, having worked at LinkedIn, I understand the compensation employment, landscape very well. On the other hand, like coming from a big company, you need to have a lot more attention to detail. You don't move as fast. You need so much alignment across different teams. And, you're of the 9 to 5 mindset. And so I had a lot to unlearn when I started my own businesses, where I'm like, no, I should be working all the time and I should be checking my email all the time, or like there's no alignment. I just need to do this. I can't wait for things to be perfect before launching, because then it will be too late. So there's a lot to unlearn as well, but of course it has its benefits.
Yeah, you mentioned like the team aspect of it. What's that like, working alongside your husband? Is it just you
Yeah.
and your husband within the company? Is there multiple
Yes,
partners?
it's us, and we have some contractors here and there as well, or business partners. We actually, for several years, we had discussed it, but we were nervous to work together because we had heard that it might affect your relationship, and we're like, we don't want to risk our marriage for a business. I mean, there are examples of people who start businesses together and then it explodes and it affects their marriage. I'm trying to think of those examples that maybe I can follow up after. But basically, we were a little worried about that. But what happened is, again, the luck factor. Over the last few years, we noticed that our careers were converging more and more. So I went to grad school when he went to business school. And then I went at work at LinkedIn when he was at Instagram. And so we were like converging. Our roles were pretty similar. So we would just ask each other like, hey, can you take a look at my presentation and things like that. When we wanted to build a business, it made so much sense at that point. We were already consulting each other so much on each other's careers. And the luck factor is also that we have very complementary skills. I am more of a high level, move fast. He's more of a detail oriented. He loves operations. And so I do the negotiations side of things, the operations side of things. There's definitely a luck factor as well, but yeah, it happens to be a good fit.
That's awesome. Now, as far as kind of how you foresee growing the company right now, what are the biggest bottlenecks that you have right now within your business that you're currently tackling?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we get so much kind of deal flow or people reaching out proactively, but I would love for more of, what's a better word of saying, like passive income type of thing. I know it's never really passive, but I would love to figure out a way to sell my courses in a more sort of self-sufficient way.
Yeah.
That is a code I haven't been able to crack yet. Like I said, we tried ads, Meta, Facebook, Instagram, with not so great results. It works so much better if we're hustling on our own, like doing all these like Q&As and nurturing the relationship. But that is obviously not easy to scale those efforts. So that's the biggest bottleneck. If I'm able to sell the courses in a more self-sufficient way, that would really unlock a lot of our revenue.
Oh yeah. I think that in terms of like the potential of the business, I've seen like over the next like 10 years, e-learning right now, there's the formal education system, and the return on investment in the formal education system, it continues to go down every single year.
Yes.
So there's going to be a tremendous need for this alternative education model for various types of businesses. Let's put like me, for example. I never went to business school. I never had a negotiation background, like never had any background whatsoever like that. Even a business background, like studying business in school. And a lot of the things that I have had to learn over the last few years has just been like alternate education sources, whether that's
Mm-hmm.
watching YouTube videos from other entrepreneurs going through the same thing, whether it's like reading books from business people that have been there and done that. So
Mm-hmm.
I foresee in your case, if you're able to create an audience for yourself, customers will come. It's just about packaging material in a way where you can get them through the door. Like for me, I would love to have an intro like to negotiations course, which gets me through level one. And
I
then
should have you in my course. Yeah, it will
I'm
be my
down
pleasure.
for it.
Okay, okay. I'm having one next week, actually. Let's go.
That's the other thing, free webinars and like just having people watch you, not for entertainment value, but like you want to pique their curiosity. I think
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
that goes a long way in getting them to, from like, I'm interested, to, wow, I'm really engaged with this.
Yeah, no, I'm fully aligned with you. Even though I follow the script in life and I was always aiming for the best schools, the best jobs, like the script that I now do not recommend to people. But yeah, I mean, I in undergrad, which was very expensive, I was learning, I had to take a chemistry class. Like, why? I've never had to use that in my life. Like, why did I spend so much money to take chemistry class? I had to take a music class. Like, like you had to as part of the curriculum. And I fully agree. I think in the near future, people will be a lot more specialized and will sort of have a better chance. I think, yeah, education will be more disaggregated and you'll do things that are more applicable to your life. I mean, I appreciate having studied math. It gave me a very robust sort of logic and thinking off of first principles. But overall, I don't use much of my math on the day to day. I wish I had taken more of a practical skill. So
Oh,
I fully agree with you. Yeah.
100%. You just reminded me of my college days at Fordham University having to take theology.
Like, why?
Yeah, like super interesting. Like, if I look back, and I'm
Right.
sure you could agree with this, like, you took a lot of really interesting courses, and classes, but now looking back, you're like, wasn't that practical? Like,
Yeah. I wish I had taken a taxes class. That's what I'm
yeah.
struggling with. Yeah.
Going off of that, I think there are universities that have these like 3-in-3 programs where, they take students and they actually make them work at a company or intern for at a company for a few years. I think that's super beneficial because you get
I
like
agree.
a little bit of both, right? So you get your
Yeah.
formal education, but then you get that real life experience. That's
Hmm.
fantastic.
I
But
agree. Yeah. Northeastern is very big in
yes,
Boston. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Northeasterns, I have friends that graduated from Northeastern and they're doing great things. So that's a great example. Since you're here with me, I'm sure a lot of people they want to hear some cool negotiation stories. And I know that you probably have a ton. We would love to like hear some real life examples where negotiating skills have like really helped individuals either get the offer they want or get the terms of a contract they wanted. Maybe if you have an example or two.
Yeah, on the job front side, that's the easiest one to share. It might be helpful first for me to cover a few of the principles that I teach on negotiations, just so that it ties in. So, one of the biggest conceptions about negotiations, and one of the things I debunk when people start working with me, is that negotiations don't have to be combative. They actually should be very collaborative and very creative. You're trying to find ways to make both parties get a win rather than a zero sum game where I take this and then now you're left with less. Of course, there are some components like that. But one example is think of in a job offer negotiation, we think of money as one of the things you're negotiating. But a company might have other things they care about, and you might have other things you care about. The company might also have things they don't care too much about, but that you care about those. So, for example, maybe they want you to start as soon as possible. They might have a project that they need to get started on as soon as possible. And then for you, the start date might not be as important. You just need a really good salary. So turn this conversation, the negotiation, into a very collaborative process where you try to figure out what are those things that we can easily give to each other and now we're both better off. So as you're exploring something like, well, what were you thinking in terms of start date? And then the client and the job applicant can say something like, I'm flexible on start date, but I would really like a higher base salary. Company's like, okay, we're happy to throw in another X amount as long as you can start within 2 to 3 weeks. I'm like, yeah, of course, I'm happy to do that. And so now this is how you get into a win-win situation. Now both parties are better off. So that is one of the examples I give that really changes the way people think about things. See about a win. So my best win has been in absolute terms. I helped someone increase their compensation by 550K more than their initial offer. So they got an offer and then we worked together very closely and then they ended up with 550K more than that offer. So that is my best win to date. Yeah, it was incredible. So it felt so personally rewarding for me to help this new family now have so many more resources to start their new life. Yeah, and we use things that I mentioned, things like let's figure out ways in which we're both a win-win. I have other, like, try to get a written offer before you negotiate. Don't show your hand. Don't share preferred salary. Don't share a preferred range. Things like that.
Yeah, but 500,000, that's like, woo,
Yes,
wow,
yes.
that's insane. You know what you're responsible for? You're responsible for paying more taxes now every year.
Good. I'm
Yes.
making the state that I love the most richer. We'll have better streets, better roads,
That's
hopefully.
awesome. That's awesome. That's a value
Yeah.
proposition right there. Wow,
Yeah, no, that's
that is great. What was was it a tech job?
yeah, I was, because your audience is a lot of founders, right? So I was actually, as I was preparing for this podcast, I wanted to share with your audience maybe a business negotiations journey, like a startup's negotiations journey, because a lot of founders, they don't realize they're negotiating day in and day out. Like you're actually negotiating all the time. So I was wondering if it's of interest to go over like that journey.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think that would be of a lot of value to everyone.
Yeah, so I actually gave a talk on this recently, so that's why I had some material prepared. But yeah, like I said, as a founder, you're negotiating all the time, and it starts with your co-founder. You're negotiating. It depends if it's a VC-backed startup or not, but you're negotiating obviously equity, focus areas. If you have overlapping skill sets, like who's going to do marketing, who's going to do operations, and things like that. You're negotiating leadership, who will be considered CEO, who will have final say. You're negotiating lifestyle, like do we work on weekends? Do we work nights, like early mornings or holidays? And then obviously compensation, like do we take salary and how much? So that's just the co-founder stuff. And there's so much more that goes into that. Then if you have investors, you're negotiating with investors, obviously for equity and control, board seats and all that. And then with your employees. So as you're hiring people, you're negotiating with the job applicants. So how do you split like cash versus equity? What kind of benefits do you give them? What kind of ownership areas? Because it's so early, you're probably still figuring out who does what. Then you negotiate with your consultants and advisors, like cash versus equity and time investment. And then with your direct reports, like deliverables and ownership and timeline. So you negotiate with your design partners if you're a B2B company, with your vendors. This is one of my favorites, and customers. So things like price and scope and timeline and royalties and exclusivity rights. And then with customers, as I mentioned, like price and deliverables. So I used to work in biotech at a top 5 biotech, Sanofi, and I negotiated $1 million deal with an analytics company vendor. And there's so much that went into it. And we ended up with a really good deal. But I love vendor negotiations because it can be very complex.
And I think it's something that people, like business owners, they constantly overlook because
Yeah,
they'll go and they'll look for a vendor and they'll just assume like this is the price of the service. And I learned early on
exactly.
from a mentor of mine that like it never hurts to ask,
Yes,
especially if your
exactly.
business is in the up and up and there's
Coming.
more
Yeah.
business for the vendor down the road. And a business, it's a strategic partnership. If I do well as a
Mm-hmm.
business, you as a vendor will do well in the long run. So it's worth it to, at least I'm negotiating on the business side right now. At least on the business side, like it's worth it for me to get a good deal now because it means in the long term you're going to get a great deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, as far as first steps, like let's say, someone's watching this and I mean, I know there's a bunch of founders that right now they're having to negotiate with their employees, they're hiring people, or with the vendors, and they want cursory information to start because it's a lot. What's the best way or the best journey for them to take with a company like yours?
Yeah, so I have free resources on my website. I have one resource for founders and one resource for job seekers. So my website is the company name, yournegotiations.com. And then in terms of working together in any capacity, if it's a deal that is coming active very soon, I love coming into like active deals soon. So I reserve maybe 3 to 5 spots per week to work with me. I would be the negotiations co-pilot. And then if it's something like, oh, I just want to learn in general, I have the self-paced course, and that you can find on my website as well. And as I mentioned, I also have a live course. That one we do on and off, not in a recurring basis, just because it's so time consuming for me. 4 straight days, at least an hour each day. I'm teaching live and I'm interacting with the participants. So those are the 3 ways to engage with me. I guess also the free resources, one-on-one consulting, self-paced course, live course.
Okay, that's fantastic. I know there's plenty of people watching that can get a lot of value, if not out of your one-on-one consulting, out of the course. I think it's a much needed skill that's often overlooked. And people, I think, over the course of their career, they develop a lot of these skills naturally, trial and error.
For sure.
Some losses here and there, but especially for young founders, young people that are early in their careers, they just had that nugget of wisdom. They would see so much more upside within their professional life.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree that young founders could use a lot from learning how to negotiate, and that we do learn a lot throughout our careers. However, surprisingly, for some people, most, actually all of my clients are mid-career to executive levels in tech and big tech. So very ambitious people, many of them with MBAs, with business background. And the reason is because there are some basic negotiations that you can learn from experience. I personally like to teach sort of the next level jump that takes you from some of the things we all know to like actually the next level. And that's how, as I mentioned, was able to increase one of my clients' comp by more than $500,000. It's because there's some things we need to unlearn. The biggest one being that negotiations do not need to be combative and they can be very collaborative. And so, yeah, I think young founders for sure have a lot to learn, but also people in their mid-career to exec levels have also a lot to learn. But because it's one of those areas where like you're either an expert or not, and we can't all be experts in everything.
Yeah, 100%. I think that overall, what we'll see in the next few years when it comes to these different aspects of business is right now taking care of one aspect that's super important, which is the negotiation part of business. I think it's super valuable to a lot of founders. And what I love about the service you're providing is you're adding an e-learning component to it, which is is going to be accessible to everyone. So it's like you don't have to go to Stanford Business School to have an idea of how to negotiate. You can do it from your own living room, and that's good for just young people in general to have that resource.
For sure, I agree. I genuinely thought this way too, even before my business, and like kind of regretting going through so much school and still not having some basic skills like taxes.
Cool.
Doing my taxes has been a challenge.
It's a challenge for all of us, and it's a challenge now. That person that you got a $500,000 pay bump on, paying a little bit more in taxes. Well, listen, I really appreciate you coming onto the podcast. This is invaluable information to a lot of people out there, and we'll add all your information when we release it. We look forward to hearing great things about you, Gerta. And
thank you so much.
Being my first fellow Albanian on the podcast.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much for having me and for being my first Albanian podcast host. I've done some podcasts too, but this one is, I feel very at home. So thank you. Yeah, reach out. I'll follow up with you. You should come to my class next week.
Give me the time and date. I'm there.
Sounds great. Awesome.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of the Sip and Scale podcast. Until next time.